political community. Liz Truss will attend the meeting of leaders from across Europe and is expected to reiterate her support for Ukraine and push for collective action on energy security and migration, delivering on UK priorities.
Well, will it be another handshake? Because she's due to meet her foe or friend, President Macron, expected to discuss the migrant crisis with him. Well, joining us now from Prague, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. And I guess, Darren, all eyes will be on the mood music as to whether that entente will still be cordial.
Yeah, indeed. And actually, Liz Truss was asked about this the other night. I was at a meeting with her and other journalists, and she insisted that friend or foe comment, actually on GBNews, wasn't it, a couple of months ago, that was a bit of banter, she said, that he is a friend. Maybe that's not surprising given the fact that, frankly, and the government have been pretty honest about this, they are going to have to rely quite a lot on France if they do want to tackle the English boat crisis in the English Channel. And I suspect you're right, migration clearly will be a key topic with Emmanuel Macron. There have been lots of suggestions, actually, that he was on the verge of signing a deal with Liz Truss until she made that comment. He then scrapped it, and there is an attempt, I think, by her and indeed by the government to try and cosy up to the French again. This, in effect, though, is his brainchild, this European political community that's meeting in Prague today. His idea that he wants to reassert Europe's place on the world stage beyond the European Union's 27 member states. That's why you've got 44 nation states here, including Turkey, Azerbaijan, lots of the Western Balkan states, Norway, and of course the United Kingdom. And Liz Truss' argument about all of this is, yes, we're, approaching this all a little bit cautiously to work out what precisely Emmanuel Macron wants to gain from all of this. But some of the key issues that the government is approaching, whether it's on migration, energy security, that war in Ukraine does need European solidarity. Not just is she meeting Emmanuel Macron, she's also meeting the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, maybe even the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen later. But she has just had a meeting with the Czech Prime Minister in the last hour or so, and we had a readout, a kind of statement from Number 10 on the details of that, and they talked about how the UK and the Czech Republic's early support for Ukraine's defence and military aid helped essentially is helping President Zelensky, who's going to dial into this conference later as well. And they also noted the long-term opportunities for the countries to work together to secure those long-term energy supplies, including cooperation on nuclear energy and renewable. Those three baskets really key to this summit, if you like, Mark, i.e. energy security, really important. Norway is here, UK trying to sign some long-term deals with them. Clearly that war in Ukraine, trying to maintain that united front. And then also, as I say, on this issue of migration, we very sadly saw dozens more migrants die in the last couple of days or so trying to get into Greece. A reminder that this migration issue, not confined to the United Kingdom, it is an issue Europe has grappled with for years. And frankly, let's be honest about this, if it's going to be dealt with in a kind of relatively satisfactory way for all sides, it is going to have to be a European approach to that. There is going to have to be some form of cooperation.
And Darren, what's the chance of this just being another talking shop, or actually any leaders walking away with practical solutions to some of the things that you have raised there?
Well, we're really interested, an example of this. I mean, you're right, Chloe, lots of times these things are merely talking shops and, they meet. Though in some ways, diplomacy is the art of talking, isn't it, and agreeing on things and presenting a united front. But, look at this, for example, in that statement I was just giving you from the Czech Prime Minister, a relation to the fact that the UK is now going to resume its partnership in the North Seas Energy Cooperation Group, i.e. working on those interconnectors to make sure that, the energy supply across Europe is connected so that people can kind of pick up the slack if somehow one bit of it falls down. So that is a practical evidence that sometimes these meetings do have an effect. Now, that had happened beforehand, but it is a sign of the cooperation that could come. I think what's really interesting also in this is that we are seeing a different approach from Liz Truss when it comes to the relationship with Europe. You know, Boris Johnson had a pretty standoffish approach. Theresa May, for slightly obvious reasons, had the same. It's clear Liz Truss does view this slightly differently, in a more cautious way as well, but slightly differently. She's even suggested that the UK could well host the next one of these in less than 6 months' time, and that's quite notable. But it is also extraordinary that she's come here for a bit of respite, frankly. That's not normally what happens to British Prime Ministers when they come to the European continent. But given what's happening at home, given the comments from Nadine Dorries today, former, of course, Culture Secretary, suggesting that Liz Truss is in a lot of trouble, that she needs to change course or could lose by a landslide, maybe the next kind of 12 hours here in Prague will be a bit of a relief, frankly.
Yeah, and Darren, just to ask, are they just flying a flag on this meeting in London, or is that a serious proposition to get back on the European stage?
I think it is. Again, this was brought up the other night when we had that meeting with Liz Truss. You know, she seemed pretty committed to it. I think they're obviously trying to work out how this summit goes. A very brief one, by the way. You know, there are round tables. We got those bilateral meetings a little later on, but Liz Truss will be back in London tonight. Now, EU leaders are staying on for their summit here tomorrow. But no, I think there is a genuine change of tone, I would say, and approach when it comes to our relations with not just the European Union, but clearly everywhere else. And the war in Ukraine has helped that, because clearly Britain knows it is part of a wider Western coalition of trying to help Ukraine defeat Vladimir Putin. And I suspect we may well see that meeting in London. But as I say, given Liz Truss' domestic problems, there'll be bigger questions, even maybe who will host it. We'll not go down that route. But, you know, things are pretty tricky at home. But she's determined, as I say, to assert Britain on the international stage again.